Welcome to Paradelphia Radio. This is Rick Pruitt, once again here in the Toxic Studios, and we are only days away from our special time of the year. Not Christmas, God knows, no, not that. People are already hammering away for Christmas. Nope, we're not there yet, people. There's one holiday, well, two holidays before that, main holidays. The one I'm talking about is Halloween, the time of year when we become relevant for a short short stint. So with me in the studio, as always, is my producer extraordinaire, Mr. Toxic Mike.
Extraordinaire.
Yeah, I gave you a compliment.
Can I put that on my resume?
You can, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll deny it, but, you know, as long as nobody calls me, you're good.
As long as nobody calls you. Excuse me, is he extraordinary or just regular?
He's just, you know, he's medium. Okay. I'll give him a medium rare. He's a medium rare.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I'm sure many of my ex-girlfriends would say the same thing.
Yeah,
medium rare.
See?
He's all right.
They're not on your resume, though, are they?
No, they're not.
No, just us. So yeah, this time of year is the time that we talk all spooky stuff. Unfortunately, we haven't had shows that often in the last few weeks. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. That can't be helped right now, but you know what? We'll plow forward and we'll do one this week, and Halloween is only a couple days away. So, with that said, Mr. Michael, I know you took yourself off screen a second ago, but
because you're the star.
Yeah, it's all right.
Got to see your beautiful face full screen.
Yeah, it's getting gray, man.
It's getting me too.
Gray.
Me too.
You hadn't seen gray.
Oh.
You hadn't seen gray. If you look back, it's funny. I every once in a while pictures will pop up of like promo pictures we did for Paradelphia from like 2014 or whatever, 2015, and I'll look and go, who the hell was that guy? Because I don't look like that anymore. And it was only like 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, there was the ones that just popped up today from some remote we did from, because Halloween we used to go out and do a lot of remotes, and maybe one day we'll be able to do that again.
Yeah.
But we used to go out and one from one of the haunted trails or something we went on, and yeah, you look at those pictures and you're like, holy crap! Just the aging over that short period of time is just crazy.
Yeah, don't get married, folks. I can say that because my wife never listens to the show.
Never.
She'll show up occasionally and rip me on air, but she'll never listen.
She'll show up and take the show in a completely different direction than it was supposed to be in, and all of a sudden it becomes like the Howard Stern Paradelphia show. 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and then she'll just disappear for she's like a groundhog on Groundhog's Day. She just pops up for a short time, goes away for a year. She saw her shadow. She ran. She'll be back in like 10 months. Anyway, yes, we got Halloween coming up, so we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about some local haunts, because we talk about everything from all corners of the globe and stories that involve a lot of different places and people around the world. But my original intention, which never truly actually ever happened, was that this show was going to be all about South Jersey, Philly, our general area. And what happened was there's just too much. Like, it's too much to talk about out there that's not local, that you can't have a show like this and not talk about. So we don't, or we do. We do, I should say. But what I like to do every now and then is kind of reel it in and go local with the information, because again, we have mainly listeners in this area. We have them all over the world, actually, but a lot of people from South Jersey and Philly area listen. And I thought that might be something interesting for them to, some of these places you may have heard about, some of them maybe not. But yeah, we'll get into that in a few minutes. But first, before I get into that, I wanted to mention a couple things. A couple of our people and organizations that we have supported over the last few years, and they've supported us. It's also the spooky time of year for them too. And they're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff out there for their respective businesses, and I wanted to throw this out there. First one is Scary Monsters Magazine. We've had Don and Vicky on the show numerous times. And I did reach out to them this year. Back a few weeks ago, I reached out to them to see about coming on the show, and they are, which is, I guess is a good thing, they are swamped. They said they would love to do it, but they literally don't have the time to do it, which I get. Like, there's I don't know how they do what they do. I honestly don't. They're two people. They don't have like a big warehouse with like 1,000 employees doing this. Like, they're literally doing that magazine by themselves. It's crazy when you look at things and you think that they're like such these big operations, and you find out the team is like 2 people. Yeah. It's mind-boggling.
Like they do the layout, which is really like the layout of that magazine is really cool. It's a throwback kind of a layout where they do a lot of and Scott Jackson does their covers. That one on screen now is their Halloween edition, which should actually be out in the stores right now. If it's not in the store, you can also get it at mymoviemonsters.com, which is their website, and you can get all kinds of cool stuff there. Not only the magazine, but you can get. I know they have a section for like books that are related to the topics. You can get swag, things like that. You could subscribe to the magazine, which is probably the easiest thing to do instead of going out and literally trying to hunt down the magazine every few months. It just comes to you, you know. But yeah, they put out their second glow-in-the-dark cover this year. They did that last year, and they did it again this year for the Halloween issue.
Glow-in-the-dark is so badass. Like it never gets old that it's so cool. It never gets old.
Look at this.
It glows in the dark.
Glows in the dark. Yeah, like walking through a toy store or whatever, or not toy, like Spirit Halloween or something. Yeah. Things like that. They're like, this is cool.
It glows in the dark.
It glows in the dark. You're like trying to find a dark area of the store to kind of like test it out.
Oh no, I'm always that guy like that will put it down. Like you got to cover your eyes to try to get all the light out. And you go, wow, it does.
Yeah, that's cool. Like you have never seen glow in the dark before. Like, oh my god, that's so awesome.
How did they make this happen?
Right. But that is pretty cool because I mean, magazines don't come glow in the dark covers generally, but they figured out how to do that, and they've done it now 2 years in a row.
Well, it's not only that, but a lot of magazines don't come in hardcover. I mean, a lot of them gone digital to be on your iPad and stuff.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about having a physical copy. I want to get. There's a podcasting magazine out there that I want the physical copy here in studio. It costs like 2 or 3 times the amount to get the physical copy over the digital copy, and I'm like, I don't want to pay that money. But no, there is something to be said about having those copies on your coffee table. And I'll tell you what, to have one, if you're a horror fan or a paranormal fan, to have this on your coffee table, that it definitely speaks volumes about you, and it's a definite conversation starter.
It's an eye catcher. Yep. Yeah, and I agree. I'm definitely a book guy. I like the tangible. You know, call me old fashioned, whatever.
You are old fashioned.
I am old fashioned. But in this, we agree that the tangible books. There's just something to it. I don't know. It's like I've read digital books. I've listened to Audible books on tape, or not tape, but what I'm saying, on audible.com. So there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that plenty of times, but there's just something different about literally holding the book in your hand and flipping the pages, and it's just, I don't know.
Oh, I totally agree.
100%. It's almost like a lost thing among the generation after us.
I'm so into that way of thinking that like at my day job, like when I'm reading like a process, and I know I'm going to a weird place with that, but any kind of like
depends on what your day job is.
Any kind of like a multi-page document, I have to print it out.
Yeah,
I can't read it on the screen because it reads like a book, and I have to print it out. And I'm always called out for like, you're wasting paper. I'm like, no, this is how it should be. You son of a bitch,
dude. This is a total aside, but you mentioned wasting paper. Let me tell you something. See this?
Yeah.
See what that is? That's a straw.
Yeah.
But it's not really a straw.
No.
What this is recycled like newspapers.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Dude, to all restaurants out there, if I wanted to suck my drink through paper, I'd roll up your menu and use it. Stop it. I want my plastic straws back. This is stupid.
Now you're that old curmudgeon.
This is stupid because it gets wet and it gets soggy, and it's literally paper.
Yeah, knock it off.
Knock it off. All right, anyway. Back on task here. So anyway, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. I mean, go anywhere. You can probably find this magazine out. 123's out now. 124, which is their winter issue, I believe they said is coming out in, I want to say November or December. It's probably later. You know what? Don't quote me on that, because it might be after the beginning of the new year.
Quoted.
Sometime-ish around the holidays, I guess, or just afterward. But anyway, for this one out right now, the one out right now is 123. The Halloween edition, go grab it. They do great work, and we wish them the best. And Don and Vicky, if you're listening, there's always a spot for you guys to come on and talk scary monsters with us here whenever you get a free minute.
Yep.
Whenever that may be.
That free minute. I'm sure that they have plenty of that.
Whenever that may be.
Whenever you want to pull a screeching halt to your production and sit down with me for a half hour.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, Phoenix, in Phoenixville, Colonial Theater. We've gone up there for a couple different events. We obviously Blobfest in the summertime. My nephew and I went up in late August, I think it was, to see their Splatterfest, which was Italian horror films from like 6 hours of Italian horror films. It was that was interesting. But last October, they did because everybody was in COVID quarantine and all that crap. They did something called A Nightmare on Bridge Street, which was basically a virtual movie marathon. This year, they're doing A Nightmare on Bridge Street 2, but it is not virtual. They're starting to bring people back. Like I said, we did the Splatterfest in August, so they're starting to bring some people and some events back into the theater. So this is actually a live event in the theater on October 30th. What this is, it's a double feature of movies. First movie is Beetlejuice, and the second movie is Trick or Treat. And they're going to have some cartoons, some entertainment. Dash Daring's going to be there doing his shtick for the night. So it should really be an entertaining evening. And you can go to their website, thecolonialtheater.com, and if you want to buy tickets, their tickets are on sale now. But that should be a real cool event if you guys are interested in doing that. I know it's the night before Halloween, so yeah, there's a picture from Splatterfest. That's the inside of the theater for anybody watching on video. It's a cool theater. It's an old fashioned looking theater. And it's a whole. We talk about the books having a certain like tangible aesthetic to it. That theater has a very tangible aesthetic to it. Watching a movie there, it's I don't want to say low tech. I don't mean low tech in a bad way, but it's a throwback. It's
a very nostalgic theater that once you go into it has a certain vibe to it that you're not going to get when you go into like AMC 8 and have the plush cushions and reclinable chair and all that kind of stuff. No, you're going to a place like this to have that kind of vibe, to have that kind of experience. You're not going here to watch, the latest Avengers movie. You're not,
although I think they do new movies there as well.
They probably do, but I mean, this is for a certain experience or certain vibe. You are going out of your way to go to this theater for that experience only.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Blobfest, they run all kinds of those like 1950s and 60s horror, sci-fi genre movies at the same time when they do it live, which they haven't done for a couple of years. But the year, 2 years ago, I guess I was up there. They did do it, and it was neat to see those old movies that you only really see on TV anymore. To see those movies on a big screen in a theater, and in that theater in particular, because it's just it. I wasn't alive in 1950, whatever, but it kind of felt like you were in that place and time,
Absolutely.
So it's neat, very neat. So again, hopefully that's a big night for them. Nightmare on Bridge Street 2, Beetlejuice and Trick or Treat, cartoons, whole lot of different stuff going on. Dash Daring is going to be your host, and tickets are on sale at thecolonialtheater.com.
Love that guy.
All right. So now we're going to throw it a little bit towards, again, the local aspect. And I talked at the beginning of the show about how there are some places in the area here in South Jersey, Philly area, that are, some are well known, some are not, that are haunts from this local area. So these came from a recent article in the Courier Post. It was put up a few days ago. So that is the source for all this. But you're going to hear it here too. So if you read the Post, good for you. You know what I'm about to say. All right, the first one is the Absecon LightHouse in Atlantic City. It's 171-foot tall lighthouse. It is the third tallest in the country, and it opened in 1857. I did not know it was the third tallest in the country. The structure was engineered by a guy named George Meade, and he went into the Union Army, and he actually went into the Battle of Gettysburg and fought at the Battle of Gettysburg. The lighthouse, though, is said to be haunted by ghostly lighthouse keepers who keep watch over things. Legend has it that a keeper spotted the Jersey Devil atop the lighthouse in 1905. And there have been other odd happenings which prompted visits by Sci-Fi's Ghostbusters and New Jersey Researchers of Paranormal Evidence, which I guess is a separate organization. I can't speak today. Over the years, people have reportedly seen apparitions, smelled cigar and pipe smoke, and heard spooky laughter and footsteps in the tower. And there's a picture of it right there on the screen, Absecon LightHouse. Again, if you guys are just listening, you're only getting half the picture, man. Literally half the picture.
But you should finish listening to the whole entire episode on audio and then watch the video.
Then watch the video. You get to see Mike twice, or get to hear Mike twice.
Yes. Who
doesn't want that?
That's a treat in itself. I mean, for Halloween, you want a treat.
That's worth the price of admission itself.
That's a treat.
All right, second place is Burlington County Jail Museum in Mount Holly. Now, actually, way back, Doug and his Jumps team and we investigated this place. So this is someplace I've actually been to. This is a pretty cool place. It was creepy as hell. I think it was the very first investigation I ever went on with them back in, I want to say like 2015-ish or 14-ish or something like that. But this is a prison that earned its place among the most haunted buildings in the state after an investigation by a paranormal team, according to the Burlington County Prison Museum Association website. The prison closed in 1965 after being in operation for 150 years. Maureen Carroll, co-director of Jersey Paranormal Investigations, has had several experiences in the jail. Carroll, who investigated hauntings since 2006, she said that we used to investigate there. The upstairs, I believe, was one of the death row cells. It was the most haunted for me. I don't know if intense is the right word. I just happened to be by myself in this one room. To me, it felt like a presence. You know how somebody gets up really close to your face. It felt like someone was getting really close to my face, trying to intimidate me. You kind of pushed back on it. Eventually, it backed off, so the feeling went away. Scott Anderson, a former staff photographer for the Courier Post, who is also a paranormal investigator, has done a few overnight sessions there at the jail, and he said it's a very scary place. He said one night we split up. There were 6 of us. We all went to different parts of the prison and stayed in the cells, and I could hear the leather footsteps of someone walking by me, and I could hear their keys jingling. So, from personal experience, I can tell you that, like I said a minute ago, it is a creepy place. And you can actually walk, like this says, you can walk in and stand in the jail cells, which in and of itself is kind of disturbing.
Which jails are we talking about?
The Burlington County. Where's that here? The Burlington. Let me back up.
I'm sorry.
Burlington County Jail Museum.
Okay.
Which is the old. Yeah, which is just the old Burlington County Jail. I guess they made it into a museum.
I gotcha.
But anyway, yeah, you can walk into the cells and stand in these cells, and obviously you're not locked in there, but you can imagine being locked in there. And these things are like 6 foot by 5 foot or something. Like, it's not much area, not much space. And just to live your life in there, like that's gotta suck, man.
It's gotta suck 100%. But like I've always like thought of these kind of. I understand the purpose of prison. I understand the purpose of, hey, don't do stupid stuff and you won't end up there.
Right.
But then you think about the mindset that goes into being in this little cage.
Yeah.
And it definitely lends itself to going crazy. And if you are a firm believer in an afterlife, it lends itself to those disturbed souls.
People get pissed
being let there afterwards. Yes, absolutely.
FYI, back to my straw, it's literally falling apart. So this, people, is why you don't use paper straws.
In case you were wondering for an update, we will continue to
update the straw as the show goes on.
Throughout the show,
look at this.
We'll make sure that you are updated.
You don't get that from that's not a bendy straw. That's a regular straw. Enough with the paper straws.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, next one says the Collins Night House in Collingswood, New Jersey. Witnesses claim to have seen shadowy figures and heard unexpected footsteps and voices in what is now a historic museum. The house was built by Edward Zane Collins in the 19th century. The place evolved with added wings for family expansion. Collins supposedly began construction of the home for himself, his widowed sister, Rebecca Knight, and her children on what was farmland north of Newton Creek. He had inherited it from his father in 1820. So there's not a whole lot of information there, and I have not been there. There's a picture of it on screen here. It looks like your typical colonial style home. Mm-hmm. But again, there's a lot of those type of homes in this area, and you've been around since 1820. You've seen a lot of shit. You got to kind of wonder,
And when you go in one of those houses that hasn't been like fully like flipped, renovated, whatever you want to call it,
right?
Like it is spooky. Like there's no getting past that. And I know individuals who have moved into these types of houses and like that feel and like to keep it that way. And I look at them like they're crazy.
Yeah.
Like I would know.
You wouldn't live in a haunted house?
No.
There's another picture of it there.
No.
It's a cool looking house.
It is definitely cool. It has that feel to it. Everything about it lends itself to that thought process of colonial and old, and right. It hasn't really been updated much. It's got that nice brick.
You can almost hear the clip-clop of the horses and smell the manure. You know what I'm saying?
You probably can in the middle of the night, and then you shit yourself, and you go, well, there's another one.
Oh, there's another one. Next one is Elaine's in Cape May. Legend has it that Elaine's is one of the most haunted places in Cape May. Over the years, there have been regular ghost hunter weekends at Elaine's, a bed and breakfast, where guests have private readings from psychics, a walking tour of Cape May's hallowed haunts and their stories, dine with, quote, ghosts in the restaurant, and then attend a ghost hunting session. The white Victorian home has a huge wraparound porch. Known for its famous dinner theater, the B&B was voted one of the top 5 dinner theaters in the world. Offers dining, a bar, and a shop. I feel like that was just an advertisement for Elaine's.
That was 100%. You just basically gave them free advertising.
Free advertising. All right.
Well, you're welcome, Elaine's.
Go eat at Elaine's. I guess.
Try the soup.
Tell them Paradelphia sent you.
But I am looking at pictures of it. It looks really cool in the inside. For what you were just talking about. Let me see if I can't find a good picture. All these pictures are a tip to everybody. When you're uploading pictures to advertise for your thing, upload big ones. But no, it looks really cool dancing, and they definitely lean on the whole haunted and spooky vibe of their establishment. So it looks really cool to go and probably take your girl. Nothing that you're going to get scared of.
Unless, of course, Elaine shows up.
If Elaine does show up and starts dancing, hopefully it's like Elaine from Seinfeld and you all have a good laugh.
Next one is Flanders Hotel in Ocean City.
Flanders,
like Ned. One of the most famous ghosts said to haunt Flanders Hotel is Emily, or the Lady in White. According to hauntedrooms.com, she's described as being in her early 20s with long brown hair. She's been seen all around the hotel, sometimes appearing and disappearing through walls.
Ooh.
The hotel even has a restaurant named after the spirit. The Flanders catacombs are essentially a full basement below sea level that includes a maze of up to 8 large areas. You would feel kind of different in different rooms, different sort of energies, recalled Carol. One of the things that we had picked up on, I'm not sure if it was Emily or what, but there was a child that had drowned, and the person that we were picking up on, she was looking for her daughter, the child that had drowned. Placed on National Register of Historic Places in 2009, the hotel will celebrate its 100th anniversary, again, the speaking, in 2023, according to its website. It was built on the Ocean City Boardwalk in 1923 and is named for the Flanders Fields in Belgium.
Huh.
The area now holds a cemetery with a row of graves of American soldiers who died there in World War I. A fire in 1927 destroyed 12 blocks of Ocean City waterfront, but the hotel survived.
Wow.
So, talk about a place that's seen some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, especially the catacombs part. Like, I'm not sure how that. I guess it was just a like some places that aren't really related to anything. They just they kind of honor a certain event in their business or in their space. And I guess that's what Flanders Hotel did with World War I and calling it the Self to Flanders. Anybody who is familiar at all with history in World War I, Flanders Fields was, an area in Belgium where they had these huge battles and they did trench warfare, and there were like, God knows how many people died in these battles. And that's why if you ever see people out front of, you see them out front of supermarkets and stuff like that around Memorial Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, they give out the poppies, the little fake poppies that you can put in your car for like $1 or $2 or whatever it is. That's why they give out poppies, because the poppies are flowers that grew in those fields.
Oh.
That's
the hotel has a very The Shining vibe to it.
Let me say again.
It definitely has you feel like there's going to be a kid running around talking to his finger yelling red rum.
Red rum.
But yeah, it has a shining feel to it, just from the outside.
Like the overlook, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here's one that I know Doug has been dying to get to for years. Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. Paranormal investigator Scott Anderson published a photo essay book, Fort Mifflin, Philadelphia's Hidden Gem. Anderson has spent countless hours at Fort Mifflin, many times overnight, and has experienced everything you could possibly experience as far as ghosts go. I've been touched. I've been pushed.
Whoa.
I've been yelled at. I've seen things, he said. Anderson said investigators make voice recordings and experience a lot of electronic voice phenomena at Fort Mifflin, located on the Delaware River near the Philadelphia airport. I get a lot of different voices, he said. You don't hear it, but when you play back the recording, it's there. I've had a little girl laugh a couple times. I haven't seen her, but Rebecca, who I guess is the leader of his group, has seen her. So this is one that I know Doug has been dying to get to for as long as I've known him. Apparently, it's quite expensive to get over there to do investigations. Like they charge like $2,000 or $3,000 to get over there.
Jesus,
which is ridiculous. But yeah, this is kind of his white whale, so to speak, of investigations. But it sounds like a really cool place if you get over there and you can afford to do it and spend a night or whatever. It sounds like a neat place to do investigations. You got to make it count though. Like I kind of feel like you're going to spend that kind of money. Like if you're going to go over there, you better get some shit.
Yeah,
some equipment, and
you better be prepared.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is it. It reminds me like this picture we're looking at. What's the Eastern State Penitentiary kind of vibe to it, which it's probably from the same era,
right?
And any of that kind of shit just seems so inhumane. Like this looks like it's probably like a place people slept. Like what we're looking at, it looks like almost like a tunnel with like rows of just wood beds.
It might be an infirmary.
It might be, but just the fact that you have these little areas with tiny little windows. And people thought, yeah, that looks good. That's fine for people
because they didn't care.
That's what they didn't care. There was no, being humane to people or making sure that people have their rights. It was no. This is where you're staying. This is what you're doing.
Right.
Deal with it.
All right. So the next one here is one that I got to tell you. This is on me that I haven't been to this place. Well, I've been there. I'm going to back up. I have been there, but I haven't been there in the context of doing an investigation. I was there, 20 or 30 years ago, a couple times as a kid. I drive up to it because there's always been this story of it being haunted. This is the Gabriel Davies Tavern in Glendora. Now, I grew up in Glendora. I know exactly where this is. It's on the other side of town from where I grew up, but it's only literally like a 3-minute drive. I could have rode my bike there as a kid in 10 minutes. But as an adult, and especially since doing this show, I haven't yet been there. And I've always had it in the back of my mind to go there. It'd be very easy to get to. It's literally from here. Oh, in fact, from here, from here, it's probably not even a mile away. If you back up and go towards, go on the Pike and go back up towards, I guess it would be west on the Pike. It might be a mile from here. So this is Gabriel Davies Tavern. William Shuck, an artist and craftsman, died in 1976 and left the property to Gloucester Township. The 3-story brick and fieldstone Georgian-style structure is listed on both the state and national registers of historic places. Carol was doing a public ghost hunt as a fundraiser a few years ago for the museum house, and everyone was sitting in what had been Shuck's bedroom. We all started sitting on the floor, and the rocking chair started rocking by itself. That was a Revolutionary War tavern. I believe it was a field hospital at some point. The last owner was Mr. Shuck, so he's one of the presences that remain there. There's another spirit we've encountered named Joseph. We tend to get activity when members of the Historic Society come and read letters that they've found from former residents from the 1800s. The house, built in 1756, is near a big timber creek, often housed boatmen who used the creek to move products. So, in addition to this, I don't know if this is true or not, but there was a rumor when I was a kid I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Glendora, and where I grew up was on the side of Glendora. If anybody knows the area, I mean, people listening in different parts of the country and world, they don't know this area, this where I'm talking about. But Glendora is in Gloucester Township, New Jersey. It's a very small area that we oftentimes call small areas in the larger township by a separate name. You know, there's Kramer Hill, there's Glendora, there's different places that just identify just a small, maybe a mile or 2 mile area that, that people live in, just to differentiate one place from another in a larger county or township. So we lived in a section called Glendora, and that was split by Black Horse Pike that ran through it. So I lived in the part of Glendora when I grew up down towards Big Timber Creek, near Deptford, New Jersey, if anybody knows where the Deptford Mall is. I was probably about a 3 or 4 minute drive from the Deptford Mall. There was a house, though, that sat at the top of my street. My parents still live there, so I still go over there all the time. And this house sat up on a hill. Sits up on a hill. It's a brick house. It's clearly an old house. And there was a kid that lived there when I was a kid that I was not friends with. He was kind of one of those type of loner kids that nobody really talked to. We didn't know a whole lot about him. But that house was clearly one of the original houses that were built in the area. I don't know how long ago. And there's a rumor, which, again, I don't know if it's true, but there's a rumor that in the basement of that house, there is a tunnel that leads from that house to Gabriel Davies Tavern. And the reason being is that house and the tavern were used during the Revolutionary War to move documents, people, weapons back and forth from near Big Timber Creek to the tavern and the other direction, back and forth. So it was an underground tunnel. I don't know if that's true, but that was always a rumor, and I've always been curious about that. Because the other thing is that house sits on a little hill, and just to the, I guess maybe I'm going to say 200 yards away, there was an area when I was a kid of I'm not going to say forest. It wasn't forest. It was just a patch of land that was overgrown with trees and weeds. And my buddies and I would go out and ride bikes. And we'd go back there, and we made a track. Or we and the other kids in town had this like dirt bike track that we would ride our bikes and jump little jumps. And what you did back in that time, you didn't have iPads, you didn't have video games. You actually went outside and played, and we rode our bikes, and we did these little...
What?
Yeah, we did these little mini dirt bike, races around this track. So years later, when I was an adult, probably sometime in the 90s maybe, they started clearing that out. And the reason they were clearing it out was because that area had unmarked graves of Revolutionary era people that lived in town. So we were literally riding our bikes on a graveyard that nobody knew at the time was a graveyard. Now it's all like manicured, like they have the whole thing. They knocked everything down. They planted grass. It's beautiful looking. Like it's a little section, maybe, I don't know, maybe like 20 yards by 50 yards or something. It sits kind of right near my mom and dad's house, right there in Glendora. And they have a little sign up that says, so and so are buried here, blah blah blah. But we had no idea. It was just like overgrown trees and weeds back then. And we were riding dirt bikes, all around the area, doing jumps and, all that crap. So we were literally riding bikes over people's graves, and unbeknownst to us, But that sits right, like I said, right down the street from this house that was up the road from me. And then the house is the one that was rumored to have this tunnel leading to Gabriel Davies Tavern. I don't know if any of that's true, but I'd be curious to find out. So that'll be, mark this down, Mike. This is going to be my little... Doug has his white whale. This is my white whale. We're going to find out about this. I'm going to put this to rest.
All right.
Sometime in the next...
We are on the case.
Sometime in the next few months, I'm going to try and talk to some people. I don't know if they have a historical society or something. You're writing it down, aren't you?
I'm also going to see if we can get ourselves a Scooby-Doo to join us.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's a cool place. And like I said, my buddies and I would go there and we'd ride, and you can pull up into the parking area in front of the place, and we would just sit there and we'd scare the crap out of each other, because there's supposed to be a haunted place. And I remember one time my buddy and I, we were sitting in, remember those old, what the hell are they called? Damn it. Geo Tracker. Remember Geo Trackers?
Yeah. Geo Trackers, yeah.
So he had this Geo Tracker, which is basically a tin can.
Yep.
With wheels. And he was sitting there. We were kind of spooked out, looking, seeing if we see anything. And my other buddy had come up behind us and started banging on the window. Scared the shit out of us. Like, we literally almost crapped ourselves. But that's the crap you do when you're a kid.
Absolutely.
Update. I've abandoned the straw. The straw has officially fallen apart. Again.
We have an update.
Again. This is why you don't use paper straws.
This is compelling.
Compelling.
Radio, podcasting, video, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Compelling on all ends.
All right, so we're going to wrap up this little segment here with a place called Greenfield Hall in Haddonfield. Haddonfield's another place. It's Kings Highway in Haddonfield is very, very famous for their haunted buildings, and that's another one I really want to get into and dig into, which, again, is another one. Ironically, the ones that I really want to dig into, I very easily could because they're all within like 5 miles of my house.
Right.
I'm investigating doing stories about shit around the world. I've literally got places 5 miles from my house that I haven't got to yet.
Next thing, you have like the Paradelphia bus where you take people on tours.
Right. The Kings Highway Mansion, listed on the National Historic Registry, is the headquarters for Historical Society of Haddonfield. There have been multiple reports of strange happenings and ghostly sightings at the historic hall. During the Revolutionary War, more than 1,200 Hessian troops camped on the surrounding fields of the property on October 21st, 1777, and their leader slept in the home. They failed in their attempt the next day to take Fort Mercer at Red Bank. More than one-third of the Hessian troops died. Haddonfield resident and Historical Society member William Meehan leads the Haunted Haddonfield walking tour in the month of October, which starts at the house. Meehan's book, Haunted Haddonfield, originally came out in 2002, and a Haunted Haddonfield Volume 2, also published by the Historical Society, is now available with more haunting stories. Remaining dates for the Haunted Haddonfield walking tour are, and it goes on to promote the walking tour, which is, we'll throw it in there. What the hell? Today's actually today is, we're recording the show today, so today is not today. Today is today.
Let's pull back that curtain.
Today is not today.
Today is not today. How many times have you woken up and thought that to yourself? Today is not today.
Today is not today. So let's see. We're going to say the 29th, 30th, and 31st. Those are the 3 upcoming dates.
There you go.
That are going to be, it's going to be available. $15.
Today is not today.
$15 to get in to do this.
I'm making a T-shirt that says that.
Today is not today.
Today is not today.
Absolutely. All right. So that being the case, we're going to start wrapping this up. But we are not actually going to wrap up completely, because while we are going to end the show, we have a little special treat for you guys. Every year around this time on Halloween, I like to put in to the show a little extra audio story or something along those lines that's spooky for Halloween. So this year, what we're going to do is, when we end the show, do not turn off your podcatcher or whatever it may be that you're listening to us on or watching us on, because I am going to be running the audio for the 1938 broadcast of War of the Worlds, which actually happened on October 30th of that year. So right around the same time you're going to be hearing this. So again, this is the Orson Welles version. If you haven't heard it, it's a classic. You have to listen to it at least once. If you have heard, I've heard this thing, I don't even know how many times, but I keep listening to it. I listened to this in I remember last year, I think I came across it on somewhere on like midsummer. And I love this broadcast so much. I just listened to it in the middle of like June or whatever the hell it was, because it's just such a cool broadcast to hear them and to know that they did all this, with people standing around microphones on a stage, and all the special effects were literal handheld. They're banging a spoon on something, or they're, using an egg beater, or they're hitting a toilet, or whatever it might be. Like, they made their own sound effects, and it all, a jar of, at one point the alien comes out of the ship, and it sounds like the top is coming off the ship, and I think it was a mayonnaise jar they held next to the microphone and spun the top off the mayonnaise jar. So it's just neat to know how they did it, and to hear the broadcast. I mean, it sounds like, honestly, this sounds like something you could do today. I mean, the audio isn't quite as crisp as you would have today, but as far as special effects and the drama and the actors, it's spot on with what you would the best of what you could hear today. And this was done, 90-something years ago, almost 90 years ago. All right, so this is going to end our portion of the show. So hopefully you guys have a great Halloween. Go out and do a lot of trick-or-treating, go to parties, eat a bunch of candy, and get ready for Thanksgiving in 3 weeks. You got 3 weeks to lose all the weight from Halloween. You heard it here first. All right, so for Mike, for me, for our Paradelphia crew, we are out of here, and enjoy War of the World. We'll see you soon.
Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects, vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. Near the end of October, business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crosley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
Next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We take you now to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown New York, where you will be entertained by the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel in New York City, we bring you the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. With a touch of the Spanish, Raymond Raquello leads off with La Comparsita.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Ramon Raquello, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York.
And now a tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust, Raymond Raquello and his orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with the noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to the music of Ramon Raquello and his orchestra. We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. I'll ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides the ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
Any time, Mr. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in the blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be at the point nearest the Earth, in opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips.
They...
Although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars?
I should say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from the Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mr. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the Natural History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carl Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home, comes a special bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we'll have our commentator, Carl Phillips, give you a word picture of the scene as soon as he can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millett and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carl Phillips again, out at the Wilmot Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin. To paint for you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes, but something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have struck on its way down. But I can see the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor. At least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. Has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say, what's the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Its curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. Getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing one side, please? While the police are pushing the crowd back. Here's Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmot, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? A step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmot.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, closer.
Yes. I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mr. Wilmot, and then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio, kind of halfway.
Yes, Mr. Wilmot, and then you saw something.
Well, not first off. I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
I turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was asleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen a kind of greenish streak and then zingo. Something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmot?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you want me to tell
No, that's
some
quite
more?
all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in a field in back of us, and the police are trying to rope off the roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. The car's headlights throw an enormous spotlight on the pit where the object's half buried. Now, some of the more daring souls now are venturing near the edge. The silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. Now, the policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen, please. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. Right. I'll move the microphone nearer. Here. Now, we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Professor Pearson?
Yes, Mr. Brock.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial. Not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth, and you can see its cylindrical
just a minute.
shape.
Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw, and the thing must be hollow.
He's moving! Keep back! Keep those men back! Keep back there! Keep those idiots back! Come on. Take off! The top's loose! Look out there! Stand back!
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out or something. I can see turning out of that black hole two luminous discs. The eyes, it might be a face, might be almost Good heavens, something wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one, and another one, and another one. They look like tentacles to me. Oh, yeah, I can see the thing's body now. It's large as a bear. It glistens like wet leather, but that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. The eyes are black, and they gleam like a serpent. The mouth is kind of V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips. It seemed to quiver and pulsate, and the monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's rising up now, and the crowd falls back. They've seen plenty. The most extraordinary experience, ladies and gentlemen. I can't find words. Well, I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you, please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmoth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We now return you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmoth's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain's conferring with someone. Can't quite see who. Oh, yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and two policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. Flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait a minute, something's happening. Humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks for the automobiles. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. We continue now with our piano interlude.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just one moment, please. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith, commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back in their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. The combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you to... Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by direct wire. Professor Pearson.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carl Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. The Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia, stationed outside of Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here's a bulletin from State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit, and there is no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the state militia of Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry, without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. Things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. Looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River. Probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmoth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. A tub, rather. Well, wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal, kind of a shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. What? It's standing on legs, actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover Mills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from New York to Philadelphia discontinued, except routing some of the trains through Allerton and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Philadelphia, Camden, and Trenton. It is estimated to twice their normal population. Martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. At this time, we take you to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We're informed that the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here's a special bulletin, New York. Cables have been received from English, French, and German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The majority voiced the opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. There have been several attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in the recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north toward Somerville with population fleeing ahead of them. The heat ray is not in use, although advancing at express train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here is a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first, embedded in the great swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up a position in the foothills of Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainfield. Here's a bulletin from Winston Field, Long Island. A fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosive flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please, ladies and gentlemen. We've run special wires to the artillery line and adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire.
140 yards to the right, sir.
Shift range 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire.
Hit, sir. Got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Fire.
Can't see the shell land, sir. Letting off a smoke.
What is it?
Black smoke, sir. Moving this way. Lying close to the ground. Moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift to 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire.
Still can't see, sir. Smoke's coming nearer.
Get the range.
13 feet. Meters.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection 22.
22 degrees.
Army bombing plane B-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vogt, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Vogt reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder, 6 altogether. 1 machine partially crippled. Believed hit by shell from Army gun in Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the earth of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards, and we'll be over the first. $800 yards. $600. $400. $200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. 8.
This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reach at South Street. Gas masks useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use routes 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard.
(2X2L calling CQ, 2X2L calling CQ, 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception? Okay, please. Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building. I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchison River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here to the end. People are holding service here below us in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor, all manner of boats, overloaded with fleeing population pulling out from docks. Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowds like New Year's Eve in city. Wait a minute, the enemy is now in sight above the Palisades. Five great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here, wading the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. A bulletin is handed me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside of Buffalo, one in Chicago, St. Louis. Seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. Steel cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out, black smoke drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running toward the East River, thousands of them, dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue. 5th Avenue. 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ, New York. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? 2X2L.
You are listening to a CBS presentation of Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in an original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, starring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present. Furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hand and I try to connect them with a professor who lives at Princeton and who on the night of October 20th glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself I shall preserve human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to write, I must live, and to live, I must eat. Find moldy bread in the kitchen and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. Keep watch at the window. Time to time, I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there's a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. Morning. Sun streams in the window. Black cloud of gas is lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm had passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road, no traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. Push on north. For some reason I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I've seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of trees, I'm ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October. Chestnuts are ripe. Fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion. The joy of finding another living being. Push on north, I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond the charred ruins of a dairy and a silo remain standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse, deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. North. Next day, I come to a city. City vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off as if a giant had sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. Reached the outskirts, I found Newark. Newark, undemolished but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man. A man armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where do you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago, from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
Hey, what was that? Did you hear something just then?
No. Only a bird. A live bird.
Yeah. You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl in this doorway here and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
No. They're going over to New York. Night, the sky's alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
Yeah. They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia. National Guard. That's good. There wasn't any war. Any more than there's war between men and ants.
Yes, but we're eatable ants. I found that out. What'll they do to us?
I thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. A Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic, like keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet. Bothering them with guns and such stuff and losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. No, instead of our rushing around blind, we gotta fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress.
Yes, but if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
What is there left?
Life, that's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either. Tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I got a plan. We men as men, we're finished. We don't know enough. We got to learn plenty before we got a chance. And we've got to live and keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see?
Well, tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. That's what it got to. That's what it got to be. That's why I watched you. Watched you. All those little office workers that used to live in these houses. They be no good.
They haven't any stuff in them. They used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running to catch their commuter's train in the morning, afraid they'd get canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they wouldn't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents. Yeah, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. Well, the Martians, they'll be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. Yeah, after a week or so of chasing around the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Sure, you bet I have. That isn't all. These Martians are going to make pets of some. Train them to do tricks. Who knows, get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. Yeah, and some maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
Oh, no, it's impossible. Human
Yes,
beings.
they will. There's men who do it gladly. One of them ever comes after me, by...
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York, there are miles and miles of them. The main ones, they're big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, huh? We'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weaklings. That rubbish, out.
As you meant me to go.
All right. Give you a chance, didn't I?
Won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Well, we got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. May not be so much we have to learn before... Listen. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left. Not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, see? But men. Men who've learned the way how. May even be in our time. Gee. Imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians. We'd turn it on men. We'd bring everybody down on their knees.
That's your plan.
Yeah. You, me, a few more of us. We'd own the world.
I see.
Hey. Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Bye, stranger. Well, after parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel, entered that silent tube. Anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. Reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s, stood alone on Times Square. Caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. Made a wide circle around me as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. Walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks. Past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark. Past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. Over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. Hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 60th Street, and from there I could see standing in a silent row along the mall 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground. And there before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all, man's defenses had failed by the humblest thing that God, His wisdom, has put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I've conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastnesses of sidereal space. But it's a remote dream. Maybe that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve to them and not to us. The future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this last chapter of the record, begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the green where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it. Bright and clean-cut, hard and silent under the dawn of that last great day.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates. By tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween. Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations coast to coast has brought you The War of the World by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air. Next week, we present a dramatization of 3 famous short stories. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.